Hi, class. Welcome to week two. Overall, very strong week one. Um, I would highly recommend that the reply post, as I've said in a few of my comments, that they're just as critical as the original post, just as elaborate. You always want to use stories and examples to illustrate your points and substantiate your arguments. You always want to bring something new to the table, new ideas, new thoughts, critiques, etc. But overall, very encouraging, strong. Strong start to the semester. When anytime you look at these theories, you have to look at them with a critical eye. Reading is supposed to be not a passive endeavor, but a highly active one, where you're arguing and discussing um, ideas with the author, grappling through the concepts, questioning them, again, critiquing the author at every turn. A lot of these theories, well, some of them have some merit to them, they are all subject to extensive critique. Remember, the point of sociology is the ruthless critique of everything and anything. That means critiquing me, critiquing yourself, critiquing your class peers as well, for the point of better understanding the world so one day we can change it. Okay, I'm going to give a brief overview for week two. These are the major theories of delinquency, mainly sociological theories of delinquency, part two. So you'll have chapter six, lower class based theories of delinquency, chapter seven, interpersonal and situational explanations of delinquency, chapter eight, the highly conservative control theories, and then chapter 10 and 11, which I'll focus less on for the exam, but I'm still including it. Radical theories of delinquency, which I think is good to read, and chapter 11, female delinquency. Of course, it's not a surprise that women were largely ignored all the way up until the 1970s and 1980s, even into the 1990s. Sarah Thornton started doing some good work on female delinquency in the 2000s. One of the earliest books, Lorraine LeBlanc, Pretty and Punk, that was a seminal book on female delinquency, looking at punk subcultures of New York and London. Prior to that, I was always looking at uh, male subcultures of delinquency: teddy boys, mods, skinheads, punks, Rothas, etc. But lately, women have been put back into front and center. And so keep in mind that for all the chapters, I've written out personally all the notes for each of those chapters, and I've placed them on the module to help you out as you're reading along. So you can also use that as a study guide, these notes that I've provided for you. Um, okay, you'll also have two short articles. One, Becoming a Marijuana User, Howard Becker. I told you before, jazz musician from the 1950s turned sociologist. So it's a beautiful, brilliant essay on how to become a marijuana user for pleasure. And then we have Sykes and Matz's Techniques of Neutralization, which I think you'll like. Okay, week two discussion boards, one and two, as normal, two discussion boards, two original posts, one per discussion is due Thursday, January 12th by midnight. And then you have six reply posts, three per discussion board, due Saturday, January 14th at 6 p.m. And you have midterm exam open this Wednesday. It's going to start this Wednesday, and it's due Sunday, January 15th by 12. So make sure you do that. Since all of your grading up to this point and even for the final paper, it's all going to be writing to make a balance. This will just be a multiple choice exam. Okay, I'm going to give a brief overview of some of these theories of delinquency, just to remind you of it as you're going through. We're going to start off with chapter 6, lower class based theories of delinquency, which of course focused on lower class kids with the concept of the juvenile gang. Keep in mind, the more radical kind of Marxist theories came out of the Frankfurt School in Germany, also the Birmingham School in England, which really had, I think, some of the most radical theories of delinquency, focusing on the youth subcultures of England, mainly from the East End of London, which is a working class area. That's where you saw emerge the first youth resistance subcultures, again, like the Teddy Boys, the Mods, later the punk subcultures. And so I think this was some of the best work on radical subcultural theory. I've recommended a book for this class called Resistance Through Rituals. And that, to me, is one of the best books ever written on juvenile delinquency. The Americans, of course, were extremely conservative in their understanding of delinquents. In fact, American criminology today is highly conservative when compared to many other countries, especially when you look at the European countries that tend to come from a more progressive kind of thought. The United States has always been stuck in conservatism and traditionalism. Of course, there's exceptions to that, no doubt about it. But for the most part, American criminology has been very conservative, very positivistic, oftentimes atheoretical, highly quantoid, not very critical whatsoever. Again, exceptions. 1960, some good stuff came out, especially with the ideas of C. Wright Mills, who started talking about what this idea of the sociological imagination is. But these British subcultural theorists, they were looking at youth subcultures in the context of class. That is, young people were responding to the same structural conditions, the same forms of structural oppression from working class backgrounds, and except of being good little lads and accepting their working class jobs, they became resistance. They were anarchists, listening to punk music, adopting clothing styles that became threatening and menacing. Sort of mohawks, anarchist signs everywhere, piercings all over the face. Not like today, where you have a lot of substance, where you have style with no substance. You have people with earrings and tattoos, but they're not part of any resistance subculture. They're just regular, nice middle class kids. Back then, when you had mohawks and tattoos, it meant something. You're almost engaged in a bridge burning act. You were an anarchist. You stood up to power. You stood up to authority. It was a real working class resistance to power and domination that largely is completely absent today. And so, but nonetheless, these lower class theories of delinquency, this is largely from an American perspective, and they looked at the juvenile gang as a delinquent subculture. And so you'll get exposed to Albert Cohen's The Middle Class Measuring Rod, Cloward and Olin's Opportunity Theory, and Walter Miller's lower class value system. And so important concepts to look at is Cohen and the Middle Class Measuring Rod, like the reaction for formation, where young people begin to reject vehemently what they cannot achieve because of social exclusion. And then you'll also be introduced to the idea of the middle class measuring rod with the evaluation of school performance and or behavior, really in and outside of school. And that this was that working class people always had to measure themselves up according to these middle class, more bourgeois standards like punctuality, neatness, cleanliness, nonviolent behavior, and so on. And so some of these theories came up with the 9 concepts that characterize middle class values. They were drive and ambition, individual responsibility, achievement and success in a classroom, and work or any other form of competition, willingness to postpone immediate satisfaction of wants and desires for a later reward, rationality with long range planning and budgeting, exercise of courtesy and self-control, control of violence and aggression, whether it's physical or verbal, wholesome recreation and constructive use of leisure time, hobbies, and respect for the property of others. Of course, we have to ask, do these values really just apply to the middle class? Do the middle class even have these values? And if so, does it really apply just to them? Or was this a bunch of snobby bourgeois white men writing from their snobby bourgeois suburban privileged lenses? And so again, this is requires a lot of critique. So take a good look at these, Cohen's reaction formation, um, the 9 concepts to characterize middle class value. Again, always with this critical eye. Then you have Cloward and Olin's differential opportunity structure. Basically, it's kind of a continuation of Robert Merton's social structure and anatomy, where you have people who accept the cultural goals of society, but they've been denied the institutional means to achieve those goals. So they become innovative and they find alternative paths to achieve that American dream. And oftentimes that's through the informal or the illicit underground illegal economy. But that wasn't good enough. So Cloward and Olin extended this and say, well, not only do they need to have this structural contradiction between cultural goals and institutional means, but they need to have access to a different opportunity structure to achieve those goals. They need to have access to an underground or an illegal economy. And so, if I gave you a homework assignment this week and I said, well, what I want you to do is to become successful drug dealers or gang leaders, you probably would be very horrible at this. You might be very good at the opportunity structure that is available to you, the legitimate economy, having a job, going to a middle class university where you can use your middle class subcultural capital and kind of navigate through, pretend you're a good student, take good notes, go through the motions, and you'll just be fine relying on your middle class values. But if you try to take your middle class values and you try to transfer those values into the underground market, you'll see that you are woefully incompetent in becoming successful in the underground or informal economy. And simply put, for most of you anyway, some of you might be successful drug dealers, but I doubt it. Uh, Most of you simply don't have access to any alternative opportunity structure. So you simply join the opportunity structure available to you: school, work, regular jobs, conventional society. But other people who have been excluded oftentimes have a different opportunity structure available to them. And they're able to use their working class subcultural capital, toughness, aggression, strength, and to become very successful in these underground, informal, illegal economies. And so very interesting to look at how Cloward and Olin explained this. Then you have Miller's theory of lower class culture and delinquency. Here you want to focus on the idea of focal concerns. What are the focal concerns of working class people in everyday life? And you'll see that the focal concerns, according to Miller, is 6 key components that he refers to as lower class culture, and that's concerned with trouble, run-ins with authority, cops, teachers, toughness, concern for physical prowess, strength, masculinity, sexual skill, lack of emotion, bravery. 3, smartness, ability to outwit others through mental gymnastics, hustling. 4, excitement, the need for thrill, alcohol, sex, gambling, drugs. 5, fate, feeling of one's future is out of one's hands, beyond one's control, and autonomy, the idea of being independent, um, not needing people, etc. Of course, do these focal concerns really only apply to the working class, or does it also apply, I think, in many ways, to the extremely wealthy, the gamblers, of the CEOs of stock markets, where they're concerned with getting in trouble with all their illegal, criminal thuggery, their displays of toughness on Wall Street, their smartness also in the clubs and the bars, right in lower Manhattan. They're looking for excitement with their betting in the Wall Street casino, their concept of fate. Certainly, all these seem to maybe not really apply to middle class so well, but certainly to the upper and wealthy classes. And so, do these 6 components really just apply to lower class culture? Chapter 7, interpersonal and situational explanations. That's focused on David Matza and his drift theory. Um, and also look at Sutherland's differential association, basically arguing that all behaviors learn. Therefore, just like quote unquote good, conforming, law abiding, mundane, orthodox behavior is learned, well, the deviant behavior is learned just the same. There's no such thing as a born criminal. It's all a bunch of psychological nonsense. Rather, delinquency, deviancy, criminality is learned in the same way as conventional behavior is learned. The learning of delinquent behavior primarily occurs in small informal settings, and the learning of delinquent behavior develops in collective experiences as well as specific situational events. So check that out. And differential association is just that youth have been socialized with a different peer group than all the conforming, mundane, law-abider normals. Um, and that also relates to differential social organization, which is an alternative to social disorganization that Merton wrote about. So rather than social disorganization, certain neighborhoods are just simply organized differently with different values, norms, beliefs. So definitely pay attention to that. Also in that chapter, there's the 9 principles of criminology, the 9 propositions, a little bit of hubris on the part of Sutherland and Cressy, but still important to look at. The 9 postulates, criminal behaviors learn, it's learning interactions with other people in a process of communication. The principal part of learning criminal behavior occurs in intimate personal groups. Then when criminal behavior is learned, you have to learn the techniques for committing the crime, just like Becker's going to write about the techniques of learning how to smoke marijuana. Uh, um, these theorists talk about the techniques of committing the crime, then also how you need specific motives, drives, rationalizations, and attitudes. 5, the 5th postulate, the specific direction of the motives and drives is learned from definitions of legal codes that are favorable or unfavorable. 6, a person becomes delinquent because of an excess definition favorable to violation of the law over definitions unfavorable to violation of the law. Basically, it's a rationalistic pursuit to violate the law. They have more going for them if they violate the law than the risks of not violating the law. 7, differential association may vary in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. 8, the process of learning criminal behavior by association with criminal and anti-criminal patterns involves all the mechanisms that are involved in any other learning. So it's not something like a person is born with a criminal mind or that they're atavistic or anything like that. It's just simply an alternative form of socialization. And then 9, while criminal behavior is an expression of general needs and values, it is not explained by those general needs and values. Since non-criminal behavior is an expression of the same needs and values, most of us want money, the finer things in life, bling, wealth, and so general needs, values, and wants is not an explanation for crime. In other words, people don't just steal because they want money. Okay, at least that's not a sufficient explanation. Check out also Sutherland's classic, The Professional Thief, very good. And he makes basically the argument that there's more honor among thieves than among the law-abiding. And I've personally found that to be very true in my life anyway. And keep in mind, there's good people on both sides of the law. There's good criminals and there's horrible law abiders, including cops. So whether on whatever side of the law you are, it doesn't mean you're a good or a bad person. Okay, and then we have Motz's drift and delinquency. Drift is a very good concept. It talks about how people go from one extreme to another, known as drift. Juveniles go between conventional and criminal behavior. Most want to be conventional, but they also engage in criminal behavior. Drift explains a gradual process that results in a molding of one's behavior. Once the crime is committed, the delinquent oftentimes feels guilt and must balance their behavior by returning to act in a law-abiding manner. And so oftentimes you can call drift an idea of soft determinism. And so make sure you look at the techniques of neutralization and think to yourself, have you ever used any of these techniques of neutralization? And there's 5 of them: denial of responsibility, denial of injury, denial of victim, condemnation of the condemners, and appeal to higher loyalties. So the denial of responsibility technique used when the deviant act was caused by an outside force. These juveniles feel that, oh, it was an abusive family, a bad neighborhood, etc. It's not my fault. And then denial of injury. Hey, nobody was hurt. There was no victim. Denial of injury. There's no really harm caused to any victim. Criminal acts are deemed deviant in terms of whether or not someone got hurt. And the denial 3 is denial of victim, closely related, but used when crime is viewed as a punishment or revenge towards a deserving person. There was no real victim here. This person got what was coming to them. They deserved it. And then condemnation of the condemners, um, places a negative image on those who are opposed to the criminal behavior. And then 5, appeal to higher loyalties, that they did it for loyalty to a person or a group. And so make sure you check that out. Then you have chapter 8, the control theories, generally very conservative. Um, Take a look at containment theory and then the general theory of crime. And when we talk about containment theory, these are drives and pulls towards delinquency that can be contained, checked, controlled, or averted. And a lot of this has to do with the one self concept, the image that people have of themselves, which is also related to how society views them. And so pay attention to the 4 types of pressures and containments: outer or social pressures and pulls, external containments, uh, inner containments, and then inner pushes. And so external pressures include adverse living conditions like poverty, unemployment, minority group status, oppression, discrimination. Those are the external pressures to engage in delinquency. Then you have the outer pulls, the so-called bad companions, deviant prestige figures, other juvenile gang members, etc., etc. Um, and then internal pushes include a host of faults and problems such as tensions, frustrations, aggressiveness, rebelliousness, immediate gratification, etc. And then you have external and outer containments that include things that prevent you from committing delinquent acts, like the nuclear group, um, the structure of roles, expectations in society, sense of acceptance and belonging. So all those become very important. And then finally, the social bond. That's Travis Hershey. Pay attention to that. That's pretty good stuff. He talks about the various things that keep people from becoming deviant. And pay attention to the 4 notes that are written. The stronger the 4 bonds, the least likely a person is to become deviant. 2, everyone has the potential to become deviant criminal. 3, social control, not moral values, maintain law and order. Again, it's very important to take away morality and law abiding. As I said, there's good and bad people on both sides of the law. Whether you obey the law or not has nothing to do if you're a moral or a good person. And then 4, without controls, one is free to commit criminal acts. So he talks about the level of attachment that one has to social norms. So if you agree with social norms, if you're attached to people or groups that are a bunch of normals and conformists, then chances are you're going to remain, a normal, a conformist. To your level of commitment, this refers to your investment in conventional rules, time, energy, effort, status. And so the more that you're committed to your mainstream societal institutions, the less likely, and the more you're invested in it, the less likely you are to become deviant. Then your level of involvement in so-called conventional and legitimate activities, school plays, sports, clubs, organizations, etc. The more involved you are, the more you're less likely to become deviant. And then belief refers to your acceptance of conventional value system, your beliefs and legitimacy of the system, that the government is legitimate, that the university is legitimate, that your social institutions are legitimate, and that you believe in the legitimacy of this society. You believe in all the illusions. You believe in all the standards. You believe in conventional thought. You believe in all the awards that are given to you. You believe in your grades. You believe in a whole system. You don't really question it. The more you don't question, the more you believe in legitimate things, the legitimacy of things, the more likely you are to be a normal, conventional, and not become a delinquent. So, anyway, that's my lecture for this week. Make sure you give a close reading in all of this. Feel free to email for any questions that you might have, and I look forward to seeing you on the discussion board. Remember, strong reply post, just like the strong original post, but otherwise, outstanding job. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, and see you later.